You're listening to The Mountain Spirit, a podcast of Christian Appalachian Project. I'm a firm believer that we're all connected by a shared humanity and that finding that intersection sometimes just means having a conversation. Today we get to hear from Robert Daniels, Technical Director for the Mountain Arts Center. There are so many wonderful venues in Eastern Kentucky. I wanted to introduce you to this beautiful facility on today's show. I'm constantly learning about the value of the arts in Appalachia in places I didn't even know existed. So thank you for joining us today on the show to learn more about the Mountain Arts Center. Hi, Robert. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're so excited to learn more about the Mountain Arts Center. It is really such a beautiful facility, and we will be working in conjunction with the Mountain Arts Center on having CAP's 60th anniversary traveling display up. So we really do hope people will stop by and then also take advantage of all the many things that you have for the community. So for people who don't know anything about the Mountain Arts Center, why don't we just start there? Can you tell us about it? What is it? Where is it? How does it serve the community in Floyd County and in particular, and in Eastern Kentucky in general?
So the Mountain Arts Center is a performing arts center in Prestonsburg, Kentucky. We have a beautiful 1,000-seat theater, which I've been to a lot of theaters and on a lot of stages, and I think it's among the finest stages anywhere. And we also have a special interest, special focus in arts education. So we have upwards of between 100 and 200 young people, well, and adults too, who are enrolled in private music lessons through the Mountain Arts Center, and they're taking lessons every week and learning instruments, learning to sing, learning all kinds of things. In addition to that, we also house a local radio station, CMH23.com, which is internet radio that just recently went on to FM broadcast on 94.3 locally. We also have a local art gallery, which we're working with you guys for March and April. I'm real excited about that. And I'm lucky enough to get to run that. We also have a recording studio in-house. And so the Mountain Arts Center in general was opened in October of 1996. And really, the whole thing was kind of spearheaded by the dream of a woman named Billie Jean Osborne. She was a music teacher and band director in Betsy Lane at Betsy Lane High School. Basically, she was fed up with having to go all the way across the state or to a bigger city when she felt like there was so much talent in the eastern part of the state that really wasn't getting the time of day because, we are so removed. So there's that aspect of it. There's also a lot of musical talent that comes from the state that really can't get any traction until they get to Nashville, especially with country music. There's a huge list of people over the years, from Loretta Lynn, Dwight Yoakam, these days Chris Stapleton, Tyler Childers. Part of the point of the MAC being here is to have a really nice venue that they can play in with a recording studio in-house, to be able to do all of these things at a really high professional level without having to go to Nashville just immediately. It really kind of gives people a footing so that when they do get out there, they're better prepared and they've got a good show under their belt, at least here at the MAC. So arts education in general, but particularly music education, that's kind of our bread and butter.
What's your background and how did you get involved with the MAC?
I was actually a theater major when I was I went to Morehead State. A lot of my professors, they saw a lot of potential in me, and they really wanted to push me to move to New York or Chicago or LA, go to a big market and really make a go of it, especially while you're still young, I guess. But I was more set on staying in the area. So the summer after I graduated, I did summer stock theater here in town. It used to be here in town, Jenny Wiley Theater. I did a summer there. out in the woods, in the wilderness with wildlife and extreme heat and very extreme conditions. And so it's kind of like a boot camp in a lot of ways. So at the end of that summer, I'd heard about the Mac and I knew some people that worked over here. All of them were like, "Oh, you've got to go. You've got to go. You'll love it. It's right up your alley." That fall, Jenny Wiley contracted me to do a show that they were doing over here at the Mac in this space. I kind of got a good foot in the door here because of that, because I came in as basically a guest sound designer and engineer for that show. So I got to know pretty quick, really, how everything worked here. And then when that show was over, the tech director at the time said, "Hey, do you want some work?" And I was like, "Well, sure," and I'm coming from a theater background. So like everything's real regimented in theater. Like lighting people, they just work on lighting. Set people just work on set. Sound people, they just do sound. So like everybody's in their own little departments, and like you don't cross over. You try your best not to cross over because you don't want to step on toes and stuff. But anyway, over here he was like, I was like, "Well, what do you want? You want lighting, sound, this or that?" And he's like, "I want somebody that can do everything," which really spoke to me because I kind of have ADD and I have my hand in everything. I love I can't really sit still, which is why my office looks like this. Like I don't spend a ton of time in here. I started over here and kind of hit the ground running, and I just kept showing up, and they kept giving me paychecks, and I've just I've worked my way on up. So
So you talked already about some of the big name folks from the area. Tell us about some of the concerts that you've had on the stage there, and what goes into bringing those artists to perform at the Mac.
in the very beginning, my boss, the executive director, Joe Campbell, if it's something he's booking, he'll be in touch with whoever on the artist's end to basically work out a deal for them to come play a show for us. They do all the math. They work out, what the deal will actually be, and then once they say, "Okay, we're going to do a show," then he sends me their technical writer, which is basically just a list of everything they need to do the show from the stage side. All the little details. My job is to make sure all of that happens for them as seamlessly as possible so they can come in, set up, and do the show, and everything runs smooth. Essentially, that's my job for technical director. That's the super basic version of it. It's not always that easy, and sometimes you got to jump through some hoops and call in favors, to make everything happen for them. But as far as since I've been here, some of the more memorable shows that we've had that really stick out in my mind, obviously we kind of catch the really good acts on the way up, and then Lord willing, they, like Chris Stapleton, blow up and become biggest star in the world. And for better for him, for worse for us, we really never see him on our level again because he's not really playing 1,000-seat rooms anymore. But that was a really memorable one for me. Back in 2015, we had 3 nights of Chris Stapleton.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so he booked 2 nights here and then 1 night at the Paramount. And by the time he had sold ours out and had basically sold the night up there out, they agreed to add another night here. And that was a really cool experience because normally you load in a show, you do the show, and then you immediately tear down and load back out. So it's especially days like that are really long days. You get here 8 in the morning or even earlier sometimes, and you work all day long. The show is over at 10:30, 11 at night, and then you're working until 12, 1, sometimes later until the day's over. That was a cool experience because once the show was over on those first 2 nights, we didn't have to tear down. And they liked it too, because they just parked the bus out back and they just walked to the bus, and they were done for the day. So it was a good chance for them to really get all their stuff together for the tour and make everything nice and neat. It was like a warehouse day for them where they were still doing a show. There was even one night where the band, after the show was over and the building had cleared out, they've got all their gear and a full monitor rig on stage. They just came back out and played and jammed and rehearsed.
Oh, wow.
Straight into the night. Yeah, so that was cool to be a fly on the wall for that, and the cleaners out cleaning the theater with, a cool thing happen. So that's one of those like once in a lifetime things that, like, looking back on it, I'm like, wow, yeah, that doesn't really happen too much.
That is a cool story.
And then Tyler Childers was another one that, like, we were all super huge fans of Tyler from years and years ago. Actually, he started coming here when he was like 15 or 16, and playing on our open mics. And so he would hang out back on the loading dock, and here's this teenage kid, and he's playing like old Bob Dylan and Woody Guthrie tunes, and we're like, this is not the stuff teenagers listen to. He was an old soul, and that's it was just wild to hear. And then he went off and was playing regionally for a long time, and we were all just rooting for him, like, please, someone get some traction on Tyler, And then finally, when it started to happen, we had him here like 3 times throughout the course of a year, and by the end of that year, he was going on a big giant tour and winning, nominated for Grammys and all of this other stuff. So it's another one of those situations where it's like, yes, awesome. It's so awesome it happened. Dang it, we're probably not going to see him for a while, because he's playing those big stages now,
It's good to be a part of seeing that local talent like become a regional talent and then become like internationally known. So
absolutely, but they all start local, and that's the thing. That's why it's important to support people that are, your friends and neighbors that are out here, trying to do the thing, is because, like, if they don't get that support right, in the beginning, they never have a chance to go any further, So everybody really owes it to themselves and to their friends to, be cheerleaders.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You can make this summer into a season of service and have a lifetime of impact on youth in Appalachia. Join us in the great outdoors by becoming a camp counselor at one of our 2 beautiful camps in eastern Kentucky. Room and board, stipend, travel reimbursement, and educational award are available. Apply today at christianapp.org/volunteer. That is christianapp.org/volunteer.
So you talked a little bit about the arts. Why are the arts important to the region, and how does it look? Because the Appalachian region, talking about Appalachian arts, but the Appalachian region is 13 states. So how does it look similar, like arts, regional arts, from state to state, and how does it look different depending on what state you're in when you're talking about Appalachian arts?
I feel like specifically, and maybe it's not as big of a deal as it used to be, but like generations of more or less isolation from other parts of the world made this area kind of culturally develop different than other places. And so there's a unique thing that's a way for people in this area to really express themselves as something that they do. There's a pretty big tradition of people, of like instrument makers in Appalachia that pretty well make instruments out of anything they could find. And so, like, I feel like there's a deeper need to do this, to the point that, like, I mean, you find a gourd that's dried out somewhere and say, okay, that's just fine as a dried out gourd, but what if I put some strings on it? I feel like that's a big part of the culture, is that everybody around here winds up learning how to pick or sing something.
I love that idea that is that culture transcends artificial boundaries like state lines. That's a cool way to think of things that connect us. And you talked about like different people learning things. Even though we started out talking about your background in tech, you also perform, and so. Can you talk a little bit about then? How did you? I know, right?
Who does this?
What I did there. About what are your musical influences, and how does that show up, those influences, in your performing life?
I've played music for years, and even when I started going to Moorhead, my initial idea was to try to be a music and theater double major, which is pretty naive of me to think that there were enough hours in a day to do both of those things.
That's young aspirational youth.
I found out pretty quick that there's only 24 hours in a day, and you can't do both of those things at the same time. So I dropped the music major and finished up the theater degree. But anyway, I've continued playing music, and I love playing music, and been fortunate enough to play a bunch of different styles of music and a bunch of bands. Me and my buddy Adam Williamson, we had a blues band together, which we still kind of do off and on. But at one time, we had like 9 people playing along. It was a big machine, but it was a Mystery Meat Blues Band, which we always thought was a cool title, because it was kind of like a collective of musicians that would pop in and out, and so if you showed up at one of our gigs, you never really knew who was going to be playing on it. And so that was kind of the idea behind the name. Was like, we always told the story of when you were in school, and for lunch one day, you've got a meat hoagie that's a big flat piece of meat, and then the next day you come in and you're having Salisbury steak, and it's like, wait a minute, I've seen this before, and so that was kind of how we were. It didn't matter if we were on a hoagie roll or had gravy on us. It was going to be a pretty good meal. That was a blues band, and played in a few different rock bands over the years. Played with Zoe Howard and Yellow Line. She's originally from McGoffin County. She's going to school at UPike now. And so I played guitar in her band. Really great songwriter. If anybody's listening, check out Zoe Howard. She's really, really talented. And then played in a bluegrass band called the Possum Up a Gum Stump Band. Which,
okay, you got to explain this name.
It's the name. It's the name of an old fiddle tune that the founding member Clyde Porter, that he found, and he just loved the name of it so much that he called his band that. But I think and I don't know for sure, but I think the idea is, if you're a possum and you're treed up on just a little gum tree stump, you're having a bad day probably. You know what I mean? You ain't got nowhere else to go. So it's it's kind of a pitiful thing, kind of idea, but. So that group, we played fiddle and dobro and whatever else I need to with that group, and we've done a lot of stuff for Prestonsburg tourism. So tour groups will come into town, and we'll play some dinner music for them, or play some bluegrass for them and stuff. So that's been pretty fun. And then along those same lines, they also put together it's a Patsy Cline and Loretta Lynn tribute band. So that's more along the lines of like classic country kind of stuff. And so I get to do some lap steel guitar on that, which is pretty fun, So
It sounds like you play a lot of instruments as well. But you're like randomly naming up all these things. I'm like, okay, I've counted at least 4 or 5 already.
Well, it's I came to the conclusion a long time ago. I worked really, really hard at guitar, and I'd work my butt off, and it seems like I would see like some 10-year-old on YouTube that could just mop the floor with me. And so, like, it just hit me one day that I would rather be, okay at, 10 different instruments than to spend all my time on this one and still get smoked by some kid on the internet. So, so yeah, that's that.
There's that. So you've told me the names of a couple of the bands, and how you kind of what your instruments you were playing there. What brought you joy? Because we're doing a lot of laughing, and what brought you joy about being in those groups?
Oh, I mean, playing music even in an empty room is a joyful experience for me. I mean, it's a gift, really. And especially like those times we're playing for tour groups. I mean, they're coming in from out of town, and they don't know that everybody and their brother plays music around here. So like this is people from around here. I feel like they kind of take it for granted, and it's not really special to them. So, but people from out of town, it's like it's magic, and just to see their reactions to it, it's like that's cool, and we had to say, and especially with folks that play in our house show here at the MAC, Kentucky Opry, literally some of the best talent anywhere. And we always kid that, the locals come and see the show, and, they're looking at, one of the top session guitarists anywhere. They go, oh, that's just Mark. I saw him at the grocery store the other day, that's no big deal. But literally, there's guys from Nashville that come in, they go, oh my gosh, you're the guy, so I feel like it's kind of the same thing, but it's, I get a lot of joy out of all of it. Just very blessed.
So you mentioned the Opry. Tell us a little bit more about the Kentucky Opry, and how, like, what are the, and tell us about Monroe. I've read about Monroe, so you got to tell.
Monroe. So the Kentucky Opry, overall, it's actually another facet of why the MAC was built. So it's a performing group of all local people to Eastern Kentucky. And so years ago, back late 80s, early 90s, Billie Jean Osborne, that kind of spearheaded this whole thing, she was down in North Carolina and saw the Carolina Opry, which was kind of, a tourist show that they had together. And it was like a music review kind of a thing. Really great show, but Miss Billie saw it, and she fully believed in the talent in the area, and so, and in her own way said, well, we could do that better, She knew all of these incredibly talented people around here. She was actually friends with Dwight Yoakam.
Oh, wow.
When he was getting started. Yeah, so and would like send him song ideas and all of this stuff. She got the group together, and they actually played over at the outdoor amphitheater here in town for a few years. And part of the reason for building the MAC was to give the Kentucky Opry their own indoor venue that they could perform in seasonally. So now we have the Kentucky Opry and the Kentucky Opry Junior Pros, which is essentially the educational component of the Kentucky Opry, where they teach kids commercial music, everything from like reading Nashville charts to putting a show together to like playing their instrument in a commercial setting, where a lot of music teachers will teach their kids to get ready for a recital. These kids their recital is a show in front of 1,000 people, you know what I mean? So
okay, so what's the Nashville chart?
So that's a system that a lot of session musicians in Nashville use whenever, instead of like writing out sheet music and taking the time to write individual notes and stuff like that, they actually write out chord progressions. And instead of writing C sharp minor to E or whatever, they break it down into a number system, which is basically just the scale degrees and then major or minor of the chord. But like really good session players and people band leaders, especially down there, they can just hear a song and then start charting it out in that way. So the reason they use numbers is because that's all showing relative back to whatever key the song is in. So if they learn a song by the number system and singer comes in and goes, I ain't hitting those notes today, we got to take it down a whole step. Well, all they got to do is change the chord they're starting and ending on, and then all the other numbers are going to be relative to that. So it's a really cool system that I was a little familiar with before I started working here, and I had a pretty good music theory background. I figured it out pretty quick, but I didn't realize how prevalent it was in the session world. And so that's a cool thing that kids get to learn here and really work with here that they don't get to work with in other settings. And it kind of shows them more of the day-to-day working life of a professional musician.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just like you was talking about the different classes and just looking on the website, seeing all the different instruments that you can learn, and just thinking about folks getting, and you maybe are also getting it like from your grandpa and someone in the community. And so just that rich tradition of passing that down and being ready to move into the business side of it feels very phenomenal. So, yeah. Talk a little bit more about the art gallery. I know you mentioned that a little bit earlier, how you all have an art gallery and it's open, gets a lot of traffic. What are some of the artists that you all have been able to showcase there?
The whole idea is really to shine a spotlight on the local folks that we have, just phenomenal talent. I used to change out the exhibits every month. I've gotten to the point to where I feel like that's not really enough time for people to see each exhibit, and in a lot of ways it feels like it's coming down just a couple weeks after it goes back up. So like I'm moving to a 2-month schedule. Some of the artists we've had, I could list a ton of them. We had a cool exhibit last year, an artist named Heather Branch Owens, which she also runs a really cool store in Prestonsburg called the Mountain Muse. And she does just some cool, funky Appalachian themed stuff. And she has kind of this running motif of like chickens and possums. Another one that I'm having this year, which I've had a few times before, is Jen Ambergy. She does a lot of cool mixed media stuff, and she really has a unique style that, I mean, it's crazy to see her process, because I mean, she'll go to like thrift shops and garage sales and stuff, and like find old books or even pages of old books, and then use that as a layer of what she's doing. And really, really beautiful stuff. Another one of my favorites is Steph Ratliff, which she's an old friend of mine. I did some theater work with her, and she came from the art world, and then to see somebody like that in the theater world doing scenic work, like, just pretty brilliant. Until I really started looking for it to try to bring people into the gallery, I didn't realize how much there was. Like, it's the kind of thing, like, if you don't have your ear to the ground for these kind of things, you could be surrounded by it and have no idea. And I think everybody is to a certain degree, but hopefully us being here and giving these folks visibility helps them as they're working life as an artist, and helps other people who aren't really plugged in to the art scene as much, find cool stuff that's right in their back door, so.
Absolutely. Well, it's just like listening to you and seeing your face that there's so much joy in what you do. What is the most inspiring thing, or one of the inspiring things about the work you do at the center, or the work that the center does in the community?
Watching these kids grow up around here and really like seeing the impact of the arts in their lives, even if they don't pursue it for the rest of their life, it's something that sticks with you that really can't be taken away. And that's why, I mean, I feel like it's a blessing, it's from God, so.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Your generosity has a direct and positive impact in the lives of people in need in Appalachia every day. It is the unwavering support of faithful friends like you that make this work possible. Many of our supporters are beginning to plan and envision what kind of legacy they want to leave to support the causes that are near and dear to their hearts. CAP is happy to provide a safe and easy experience for people to create a will and support CAP through non-cash gifts. Through our partnership with Free Will, CAP offers our donors the ability to create a will online and alter it at no charge. Our partnership with Free Will also includes their Smart Giving Suite, which allows donors to give through their IRA, donor advised funds, and stock online, in addition to creating a will for free. In recent years, Appalachia has faced unrelenting challenges, including the pandemic, inflation, and back-to-back natural disasters. You can make a life-changing impact and leave a legacy of hope in Appalachia. To learn more about non-cash giving opportunities, please visit christianapp.org/more ways to give.
Lots of people have never visited Appalachia. What's one thing that you're most proud of about the region?
People and a culture of kindness that I feel like there's some of it everywhere, but I feel like it's really ingrained into a part of the culture here. That's my favorite part about the culture is, good people doing good things for people. So
that's a great segue into our last question, because I believe Christian Appalachian Project is good people doing good things. And our mission statement is building hope, transforming lives, and sharing Christ's love through service in Appalachia. So when you think of those four words, hope, transformation, love, and service, which one resonates with you when you think of Appalachia?
Really all of them, but I feel like service, really, it's not just lip service around here. You know what I mean? I really feel like there's a lot more folks around here like that than we realize.
Robert, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Our guest today has been Robert Daniels. He's the technical director for the Mountain Arts Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show today and will check out next week's episode. Tell your friends to check us out too. You can follow the work of Christian Appalachian Project on all social media channels. You can also find the podcast at wearecap.org/podcast or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Take a moment to check out the show notes where you will find links for additional information about today's guest or today's subject. If you like the show, please take a moment to leave us a review. We would so much appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe so that you never miss a new episode. We'll see you next week.